Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. You guys know who I am. I'm Dr. Angela Butts-Chester, and you know what I like to do with my show? Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on a fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about my guest. We'll be spending time today with Catherine Hudson, and we'll be talking about her book, A Prophet's Journal, 2016 to 2020. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, Catherine. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Daily Spark TV.
Hello, Dr. Angela. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for asking. Now, I am really excited to talk to you about your book and the all that you are doing. But we have a little bit of a tradition around here before we get started, and that is I feel that we should always give an opportunity for each guest to introduce themselves to those folks that may be unfamiliar with you or your work. So, my first question for you is tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you you?
All right. So I am 68 years old, a mom of 3 children and 15 grandchildren. I live just east of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I'm a professional dog trainer. That is what I do for a living. And the Lord has allowed me over the years, as Peter, the Apostle Peter, used a fishing pole for ministry, and Paul was a tent maker. God's allowed me to use a dog leash and a collar.
Oh, I love that. I love that, especially if you happen to be a fur baby parent. That is absolutely a beautiful way of sharing the message. And our animals are such a great medium to start conversation, to help with emotional healing, to really sometimes get you as a person into a space where it may be hard to have conversation or to make friends, but there's nothing like a cutesy little dog that just kind of relaxes everyone and puts everyone in a really great headspace. I love that you are doing that. Now, being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that this was a way for you to share your message, share your space with the world?
So here's where it really gets interesting. I am dyslexic. I haven't even finished high school. Writing was definitely not something that I was good at or even enjoyed. I do everything in point form. But one day, and this is how the book came to be, I was at church and I had been worshiping, and I tend to worship pretty extravagant, but at this particular church, they weren't into that. So I tended to be somewhat controlled. And I had been there, a Sunday school teacher and the whole bit, for like 6 years. And the pastor came to me one day and he said, some of the people find your worship distracting. And my heart broke. I was so sad. It was like, I'm not doing this to be seen. I'm doing this because I love the Lord, right? I'm just hanging out with him. So that particular day, as the service started and the worship started, I found myself leaving the service, crossing over the hall into the prayer room, turning off the light, and literally sitting in the dark and crying. And I cried from those ugly tears, right from, the top of my head to the very tips of my toes. And I just kept saying, God, how can I show them what's in me? If I could somehow infuse what's in me, my passion for you, into them, I don't know how I can do it. But if they only knew, this isn't about me being seen. This is about just loving you, right? And just your presence. I believe that's the day that the book happened. So shortly after that time, 20 years before, the Lord had given me Vision. So let me tell you, I don't say that lightly. I call something a picture. If God shows me something for you, Dr. Angela, right now, I'm not going to remember it in a day or a week from now. It's for this moment. It's for you in this moment. But I call something a vision. It's like a video that plays out before me. It's just as fresh and clear. 10 years can go by. When I think about it, it's the same. And I'm wide awake. I'm not asleep. This is I could have it while I'm talking to you right now, as a matter of fact. Some are really short, and some I lose track of time. But what's different is this: in around 2016, so it had been happening over a period of about 20 years, off and on, and I really didn't tell anybody. It was personal. It was between the Lord and I. And honestly, I thought some people might think I was a bit of a nut. Um, so so I didn't really share. So in 2016, I I noticed something had changed. Some of the visions that I had, remember they were just as fresh and clear, started to evolve. And what I mean by that is, I use this example that let's say I was walking toward a White House 10 years ago. Every time I thought about it, it was the same White House. But last week I noticed I was walking up the front porch, and today the front door was blue. So they started to evolve. And I felt like the Lord wanted me to write them down. Well, I'm dyslexic, so I write everything in point form. So on little sticky notes, I would write the date and put saw a blue door. And then I would put the little sticky note by my computer. And when I had time, I would, type it in. So now and I felt like the Lord wanted me to keep like a bit of a journal of what my life was like at the time. But it was just for me. This wasn't for anybody else. This was just for me. So fast forward 4 years. I've moved from this small community. I've moved to another community that's about half an hour away. And it is now, it started in 2016, but this is now January 2020. COVID has just happened. And a friend of mine was sitting at the house in my living room, and she goes, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. I feel like the Lord wants you to work on your journal," because people knew I was keeping it, but I didn't feel like the Lord gave me permission to share it. So I laughed to myself, and I thought the reason she said that is because there's probably a stack of sticky notes sitting next to my computer. So anyway, when she left, I went up to work on the computer and put them on. And I looked at the page count. Dr. Angela, in 4 years, I had 80 pages of point form. 80. And I said to the Lord, I said, "What is this? Why do I need 80 pages of what happened to me?" And he said, "It's a book." So at that moment, I was like, that's the craziest thing ever. Like, COVID has just happened. What am I going to do? And then this is going to sound really nuts, but it's true. I went downstairs, and I tended to be glued to CNN at the time because COVID was just happening, and they seemed to be giving the most information, the most current information. And I heard the Lord speak to me and say that I needed to publish it. I needed a publisher. And he reminded me that every once in a while on CNN was, "Are you a Christian publisher called so-and-so?" Right? And I kind of giggled. I hadn't seen that ad in like forever, it felt like, right? And I was like, I'm not doing that. He would not stop bugging me. It was like he was poking me, right? I was like, fine, I'll do it. I'm all by myself. I pick up my phone, I Google, right? And I find a Christian publisher, and I email them. So 2 days later, they contact me. There were two. They contact me. Oh, and by the way, that ad came on within an hour on CNN. I was like, fine. So I contact them too. 2 days later, they contact me. One, I don't think were Christians. I don't think they really knew about the Lord. And the other one didn't understand what prophetic was. So it was like, no, this isn't right. So I go over to the church that I was attending, and I said to the pastor, oh, and the other thing that's really important to share is every word in this book. I have never fasted or prayed over anything more in my life than this. There's a lot of people who call themselves believers, Dr. Angela, but they have no problem with exaggerating or stretching or adding to what is accurate. If God gives you a fish and it's 2 inches, it's two. It's not 2 1/4. It's not 1 5/8. It's two. He does not need help. So I went over to the pastor and I said, do you remember things happening this way? Was this person in the room at that time? Because it was really important for me to be as accurate as possible. Because remember, I was keeping a journal. So anyway, I told him, I said, the craziest thing has happened. I think it's a book. And I think the Lord wants me to get it published. And he goes, and so I told him about these other two publishers. And he goes, well, there's a Christian publisher in Belleville. Well, Belleville happened to be 20 minutes away from where I lived. The other two publishers were in the States. And remember, I'm in Ontario, Canada. And I said, pardon? And he said, well, there's a Christian publisher in Belleville. I said, okay. So I go back home and I phone them. Remember, this is just at the beginning of COVID. And I'm talking to the lady, and her and I were we were so in sync. And she said, well, send me your manuscript. Why not? Because there's no manuscript. You gotta be kidding me. It's 80 pages of point form on sticky notes. So, but because COVID had just happened, everything had stopped. So I didn't have any dogs coming. The Lord literally would have me go upstairs, type, come back downstairs, drink my tea, go back upstairs, type. And 2 weeks later, I had a manuscript that I sent in to them. And they said, we need to read the whole thing to make sure it meets our requirements and our values, right? 40 pages in, she calls me and she said, we're publishing this. We're publishing this. We know this is from the Lord. But now COVID has said nothing is getting done. Remember, everything stopped except for essential services. Guess what the publishing company also owned? An essential service. So Prophet's Journal was literally published during COVID when nothing else was moving. All right, gets even crazier. Even more of God moments, right? This is how I know the Lord was a part of this. So I had no income. And I'm not a wealthy person to begin with. So I had no income. And they said, you know, this is going to cost almost $4,000 to have published, right? But I hear that, and I said to the Lord, I said, you know, like I've got rent, I've got this, right? And I hear the Lord say, I've got this. Literally those words, I've got this. And by the way, I don't hear him as an audible voice. He just speaks to my spirit. And there's times where it's very emphatic. And this was one of them. I've got this, right? Said, pay your bills. I've got this. I was like, okay. Well, because it was COVID, and what I do with the dogs is they live with me and I train them over a period of a week. And then I work with the owner. I was able to bring the occasional dog in to be able to be trained. So I made a little bit of money. So I had enough to pay my bills. And I had about $800 that I sent to the publisher. And they said, listen, we believe that the Lord's in this so much, we're going to start publishing it, even if it's not even paid for. And I was like, okay. So then our prime minister called all the Canadians home during COVID. He said, everybody come home. So my cousin, who I knew, I hadn't seen my cousin in a very, very long time. We lost connection when we were kids. And I think I'd only seen her maybe twice in, I don't know, 50 years, because I'm 68. Anyway, I kept feeling the Lord wanting me to reach out to her. And I knew that she had come home and she was probably about an hour and a half away, but he would not stop bugging me again. It was one of those poking kind of things. I hadn't talked to him forever. So anyway, I call her up. I don't know what her spiritual walk is. I don't know anything about her. Well, we had this great conversation about how we love the Lord and blah, blah, blah. And you know, what's going on in your life. So I was telling her about the book. Hang up. The next day, my cousin calls me and she said, how much is a book? And I said, $20. And she said, no, how much is the for publishing it. I go, oh, it's a lot of money, right? Like I've only been able to pay like 800. And she said, oh, I'll have it paid by the end of the month. She said, God just told me to pay for it. So the Lord blessed, and the journal was completely paid for, being published, edited, everything during COVID. That happened by the end of May. The book was paid for, and it was published in book form by October of 2020.
Oh my goodness. Now, I know people that watch the show, and I have to, I'm gonna stop you there just for a few reasons,
Sure.
because one, I know that my usual viewers are going, wow, Dr. Angela never lets anyone talk this much. But you know what? No, it was a good thing, because while you were speaking, I was being instructed, don't stop her yet.
Wow.
Because I needed to hear, we needed to hear the whole story of how awesome and amazing our God was. If I had stopped you too short, we wouldn't have heard that they
No.
said, we're going to let you do this without paying for all of it. We wouldn't have heard that your cousin said that she heard from the Lord and that she was going to pay. Like all of those little things in there. But most importantly, you did what you were supposed to do, and God took care of the rest, right? It is so awesome. I am so glad that I asked the question of you, but that you felt like this was a safe place to share your story. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there that are listening that say, yes, we too hear directly from the Lord. Sometimes it is a knowing, like you just simply have the answer. I call those my God downloads. Sometimes it is an audible voice where you know the difference between like hearing yourself
Amen.
read
Yes.
in your head, right? But you
Yes.
know that that voice is the God voice. And for me, many times it's stop, go. It's like one or two words that I get that's very audible. The longer information is that knowing, that download that you were talking about. And absolutely, yes, the visions, they are the brightest, the most HD things that you see. And like you said, you never forget a detail. I might forget what I had on yesterday, what I saw on television, but I am
Exactly.
not going to forget those God downloads, those visions that he gives to us, or those dreams that we have that are so inspired by the Lord. So you are so right there. But it is amazing how sometimes people think that those things are no longer happening. And I'm glad that you mentioned it. And I wanted to go ahead and kind of rah too and say, yeah, they happen to you, they happen to me, and they're happening even still to people today. Now, I don't confess to be a prophet or anything. I just know that I talk to the Lord and the Lord talks back. I ask
Yes.
for sight and God gives me the vision of what I am supposed to do. So I applaud you. Now I wish that the viewers could have seen what you saw with all of my expressions there, but it is just so beautiful, that story. And I ask that question of every guest because I never know what the Lord's going to share through each person that I have an opportunity to speak with. I love that. That is so beautiful. Now I'm going to kind of fast forward a little bit through my usual questions that I ask, but I do want to ask one that I try to be consistent with as well, and that is, do you feel that your book is appropriate or okay for someone in high school to read, like a 16, 17-year-old? Or do they need to be more like college age and older? Do they need more life experience to be able
No.
to follow along? Or can our teens read it as well?
So teens can read it. Uh, there's no age limit on this particular book because it is a journal, but the visions are very picture based, and it really, what this is all about is I have no titles. I am not anybody. And I'm not saying that in a prideful way, honestly. I'm just, I remember when I first got saved, and I just said, Lord, use me. Whatever that looks like, use me. Here I am, pick me. I used to stand on my tippy toes with my hands to the ceiling, right? Is stretching my fingertips as high as I possibly can, right? And just say, use me. Here I am. And it didn't matter what that was about. So what I really believe that the book does is help people understand you don't have to be, sorry, Dr. Angela, a doctor. You don't have to have theology degrees. You don't, right? He wants to just, all he's looking for is a willing heart. And if you have a willing heart, that's what this book is about. This book is about sharing that and just sharing those visions that the Lord's given me.
And I think that is so incredibly perfect for our teens, because our teens and our young adults are looking for those of us who are authentic in our message. They are just as tired as we are, right? Of people kind of putting stuff out there or doing it because it's the trend or it's what marketing says that we should do. People really want to be able to connect with their fellow human beings one on one, but more importantly, they want to be able to connect with God from like a real point of view, right? They don't want this pie in the sky. They don't want this, old man time kind of like figure that lives way up there in the heavens. They want to know, who is this person, who is this being that we are being told about, and how does he know me? So I think the more that we relate to those things, and the more that we can share those things, the more we're bringing in that next generation. I love it. Well, it is time for us to take a very short break. But when we get back, don't worry, we are going to continue this conversation. I cannot wait to continue having it with you. Now, before we go to break, though, can you remind everyone, we know that your book is, of course, available on Amazon and wherever books are sold. But if they want to get in contact with you, if they want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
So I have, because I'm a dog trainer, so my email is bark, like a dog barking, BARK Avenue, ADENUE @yahoo.ca.
All righty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book and how to reach out to Catherine. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. Now, Catherine, I am so enjoying talking to you, if you can't tell. But I love, again, we were talking about being authentic and just expressing ourselves. And I think that our young adults and our teens are really calling us to task on that, right? They're making sure that we are not doing those things that have been done in the past. We're not knocking anyone. That's not what we do here. But I think that we are starting to learn to refine how we present who we are. That, like you said, is not about titles. God isn't about all of that. He gives us the wisdom to move forward, the resources to move forward, and all of those things. But he sees our heart. And I think that that's what our young people really want to see more of, and that is see more of our heart. What were you going to share with us there? Was it something about our teens or a little bit more about your book?
It was about that authenticness. Some people feel like you can't question what God is doing in your life. And that's one of the things in the journal. I question all the time. So I want to share with you a vision. So I was at church I was having the best time. I was just worshiping. I was just totally in love with the Lord. I was sitting at the front. I was sort of felt like I'd been hit by a bit of a Mack truck. And I sort of shimmied back and was leaning up against the pew, but just in this beautiful place of just loving on the Lord. And I closed my eyes and I was suddenly face down in the midst of hundreds of cockroaches. Hundreds. I could smell them. I could hear I could hear the clicking of their shells and their bodies hitting each other. And I opened my eyes and I remember, and I'm in church. And I opened up my eyes and it was like, what's that? That's really, really gross and it smells really, really bad. How could Satan invade my mind right now? I don't understand. God, is that you? Why would you want me to be like, why? What? Okay, all right. Because that can't be the enemy. This has to be you. But all right. So I closed my eyes again and I trusted the Lord that he wanted to show me something. And I was immediately back face down in the midst of all these cockroaches. And it was just, revolting smell and sound. I can still hear them clicking in my ears. And then all of a sudden I saw these sandals. And I knew it was the Lord. And I saw his hand go through that pile of cockroaches until one sat right on his hand like this. And I saw him lift his hand up to about waist level. And I heard him say, you see a cockroach. I see a beetle. And the Lord really spoke to me about what real love is and what his creation really looks like. And it's us. And how we judge people based on their appearance and based on where they live and their environment and their circumstances. And he doesn't see that. He sees their heart.
And as you were talking, when you said, I see a beetle, I was like, oh my goodness. That's what we do to people.
It is.
That's what we do to various countries, and we rank them and we do all the things. Oh my heavens. Thank you again, Catherine, for being a guest here on Daily Spark TV.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Angela. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And viewers, thank you for spending time with us here today as well. I hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you again today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.